Hey, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Arthur Haggerty. I am with Paramount Residential Mortgage Group, and this is our first episode of Ask the Expert. And today we have a very qualified expert with us today. His name is Tim Rowen. He's with Rowen Allstate Insurance. Mr. Rowen, please share the group some information about yourself.
Sure. Thank you for the nice intro there. So I've been in business with Allstate for over 3 decades, and my office is in Turlock, California. We do all types of insurance, auto, home, life, commercial, you name it.
Great. Thank you, sir. So we're going to kind of go down this journey, and I want to ask you some questions that, sometimes with auto insurance can be a little confusing with all the terms. And we want to get your insight just to make sure that the audience out there has enough coverage and that they're protecting what they work for all their life, their family, their children, all those things all the way around. So talk to me in the audience about what's the minimum coverage by law in California, and is that coverage enough?
So it was established in 1965, and they've never changed the limit amount. So no, it is not enough. But the limit required by law to keep you legal on the road is $15,000 per person, $30,000 per accident, and $5,000 for property damage to others, their bodily injury or their property damage.
Okay, so you said that these limits were established, to make sure I understand this, 1965.
That's correct.
So does that mean that with the cost of living and inflation, that if you have one accident at those minimum limits, that you're potentially putting you and your loved one's financial future at risk? Is that what I'm understanding?
Right. And the old adage of changing your entire situation in life about, well, it only takes 2-second accident to change your whole financial situation for a lifetime of hard work.
Okay. So with that being said, what would you recommend? Let's look at someone starting out, maybe new family, someone kind of at that phase of building, and then someone toward kind of, I don't want to say the end of life, but they built a lot of assets. What would be your expert recommendation?
Well, I mean, it's different for everybody, of course, because of their assets and income and all that. But normally we never actually offer anybody to start out at $15,000 per person for bodily injury to others. That would barely pay for an ambulance ride if you hit someone else and they got injured. So medical costs in hospitals are so much more. And then you have their loss of income, their pain and suffering, and they could come back with a lawsuit that could cripple your income for way too many years into life. So.
Now, when you say cripple your income,
right?
Can you elaborate? What does that look like from a monetary perspective?
So attorneys that I've spoken to over the years have explained, some say 30%, some say 40% of your income can be attached to pay restitution for what you don't have in auto liability coverage.
So if I hit someone, hypothetically,
yes,
and I have the minimum limits, but the cost, medical, bodily injury, property damage exceeds substantially what I have.
Right.
You're telling me that they could go after my wages.
Right. So you don't have to be a big property owner to be exposed to the problem. You don't have to have a fat bank account to be exposed to the problem. But we all know that those are bigger targets for attorneys, but they're very patient types nowadays that will attach your income for tons of years to get that difference paid back. Because bodily injury nowadays, if you put somebody in the hospital and they have surgeries and all the other stuff that goes along with it to and their loss of income and pain and suffering, it can be huge.
Wow. Okay. So I don't know if you have these numbers, but what do you suspect is the average settlement payout in California for an auto accident?
I don't have those figures, but I can tell you what I've seen a lot of in my business is 150,000, probably in most bodily injury accidents that are, serious bodily injury accidents. Even small ones, it definitely exceed the 15,000 limit.
That's pretty much 10 times what the basic coverage covers.
Yeah, in my opinion, that minimum limit should have been raised many years ago.
So not necessarily to go down a rabbit hole, why are those minimum limits still in place?
The legislation never has gotten around to making a change on that. And unfortunately, with inflation over the years, it just doesn't keep up. Like I usually say, the 15,000 probably pay for an ambulance right nowadays. The rest is going to be, it's going to be froth that you don't have.
That's pretty scary.
Yeah.
And I can tell you from, our coverage that we had was substantially more. When you and I had that conversation a few months back, and you start asking me some of those questions to kind of uncover where we are in life, even the extended coverages were not enough.
Right.
Beyond the basic limits.
Right. You had coverages that used to be considered good high coverages years ago, but all that's changed with inflation.
Yes, sir. Okay. And I appreciate the insight you've given with that. Excuse me. So another question I have for you, I get sometimes confused on comprehensive, collision, medical, uninsured, underinsured. If I'm getting a policy, what ones do I need to have, and which ones are kind of the proverbial icing on the cake or option?
Right. So the way I usually explain the entire list of coverages to a client is the bodily injury part we went over. That's the part that protects you against lawsuits and having your income attached for a ton of years, not to mention your bank accounts and property if you have some. The uninsured motorist is the next part of it, that you're allowed to carry as much uninsured motorist coverage for yourself. It's uninsured / underinsured motorists. So that means if the other guy hits you and he's at fault and he doesn't have any coverage or enough coverage for your settlement, then your uninsured / underinsured motorist coverage would take care of the difference up to your limits there. And you're allowed to have as much for yourself as you provide in other people for liability. For instance, a lot of our clients carry $250,000 if they hit someone else, but they also have it for themselves if someone hits them that's underinsured. And you would think, hey, well, I'll just sue the other guy if he doesn't have enough. But a lot of times, you can't squeeze blood out of a rock either. So you can get your settlement and then just let the insurance company worry about the rest. The next coverage is like medical coverage. Is no matter whose fault it is, the medical coverage takes care of that situation. You don't always need medical coverage, depending on your health insurance situation, which if you want to cover that more, we can in a second. But the next part is the physical damage to your vehicle, which if you have a newer vehicle or one that you feel that you need to have full coverage on, or if you have a loan, you definitely have to have full coverage on. You have collision coverage, which is anytime you collide with something, bless you, or something collides with you, then that's the collision coverage. Comprehensive is just like the word entails, is anything else that happens to your vehicle is covered by comprehensive. That's your fire, theft, vandalism, glass breakage, malicious mischief, all that.
Okay. So from the perspective of getting insurance with medical, if you have medical coverage through, HMO or PPO,
right?
That's not necessarily required because it's going to cover yourself and those that are under your policy.
Right.
But if there's someone that's not part of your household that's in an accident,
right,
would you want to depend that they have insurance, their own medical insurance, or how would that protect the?
So different people feel differently about that. Like, well, I've had people answer, well, people that are riding with me should have their own medical one way or the other. And then some people feel like they need to make sure that their passengers are taken care of, at least for maybe 10 grand or something like that. They'll pick a limit that sounds palatable based on the cost. So it really is different with each individual. But if you have medical coverage and you're more concerned about just your immediate family, then you don't need to double pay by having extra medical coverage, because those companies are not going to coordinate anyways. One's going to take from the other between your auto insurance and your personal health insurance.
So it sounds like that if I had, or someone has medical insurance under their auto insurance and
Right.
regular medical insurance, you can't
Right.
aggregate the two for coverage. Did I
Right.
understand that correctly?
Correct.
Okay. All right. So out of all those, you would say that medical insurance is an option. Everybody should look at that based on their own individual circumstances.
Exactly. That's very well put.
Okay, great. So how about this gap insurance? We've heard
Okay.
stories of people buy a car,
Mhm.
get in an accident, they owe
Right.
more than the car is worth when it gets totaled.
Correct.
What do you think about gap insurance?
I think it's a very good idea on a brand new vehicle, because the second you drive it over the curb from the car lot, it normally loses a couple of $1,000s of value.
Okay.
And it keeps going down during the first 3 years. So most auto insurance companies will allow you to buy gap coverage or replacement cost coverage through them. I know Allstate does, allows us to sell it if it's within 30 days of the purchase of the vehicle. And it's usually only $5 or $6 a month, but it will make you well again. So if you're upside down in a loan, it'll make sure the loan's paid off. But on the other hand, when people put a lot of money down on a vehicle or trade a vehicle in, then they have a lot of equity in it. And then the replacement cost coverage is the option for those people they may want to look at. Same premium cost, but it makes sure that you get a new vehicle during the first 3 years of ownership.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you. Now, we're all trying to maximize our dollars and have more money at the end of the month.
Right.
What would you recommend, or what steps can a consumer take, our audience take, to reduce their auto rates without jeopardizing their coverage?
Higher deductibles. If, for instance, a person is doing pretty well financially and they don't mind taking a little more risk on the deductible side, so maybe they would go from a $250 or a $500 collision deductible, and they're willing to bet on their own driving abilities and take a little higher deductible, like maybe $1,000. Sometimes on very expensive vehicles, they'll take a $2,500 or $5,000 deductible, but they would rather take that little risk. It's not always little, but I mean, they would rather take that risk than hundreds of thousands of dollars on a liability situation where they did not have enough of that. So when it comes to someone trying to figure out where they spend the money, but they want to be well protected, I would say if it comes between taking a little higher deductible to help afford higher liability limits, that makes a lot more sense, because the short pain of having to come out of pocket for a deductible will go away, where that liability situation will linger for many years.
Linger for a long time. I do understand.
Right.
So, with the advent of the internet and all these major players that are in the insurance, auto, homeowners insurance space,
Right.
what would, because it's convenient for me to go online and do that very quickly, so to speak.
Right.
What's the benefit of me using someone like yourself that has a traditional building with employees that you can walk in, pick up the phone and call that person? What's the benefit to me as a consumer to reach out to you versus doing business with the other guys?
Right. So there is no cost difference. It's just that we're here during normal business hours, but our phones are still forwarded to the company 24 hours a day. The real positive to that is having an advocate for you here that's working for you and on your side throughout a claim situation. Being alone in a claim situation with a 1-800 company, where every time you call in there, you talk to a different person. This time you're talking to Pete. Last time you talked to Joe. It's not very personable, and you have to start all over with your problem again with somebody so they get the feel for it and understand it. And I've heard nightmares in those situations where having an advocate with you throughout the tough situation really can pay for itself.
Okay. So it sounds like what you said, there's no difference in cost.
Right.
And if you're there from, I'll say 8 to 5 or 8 to 6,
Right.
but I need someone on the phone at 10 o'clock at night, it's still going to ring. When
Yes.
they call your office to the Allstate
Right.
kind of 24/7 customer service.
You will get a licensed advocate on the other end,
Okay.
and they will send us an email to update us of what went on.
Okay. That's helpful. And I know you and I've had that conversation.
Right.
We've since switched from the 800 number to the brick and mortar.
Right.
Because we want that. I can speak from personal experience. I want that personal touch.
Right.
And if I know I get in trouble, I know, and no offense taken, please don't take offense, but if I have to choke someone, I know who I can choke.
Yeah. 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 You know where I'm at.
Yes, sir. Versus,
Yep.
Like you said, calling that number, getting someone different.
Right. Well, we do have clients that come in and want to sit down in front of us and draw out a picture of what happened in the accident and things like that. Try to do that over the phone.
Okay. And before we wrap this up, one more question I have for you. Just briefly share from one of your experiences of someone that did not have enough auto insurance coverage when they needed.
Right. There was a client that I met with and went over their limits, raised their auto limits to $250,000 per person and $500,000 per accident. It ended up that wasn't enough. I did try to get them into an umbrella policy as well, where they could have had $1 million or $2 million or whatever they needed for their financial situation to protect themselves. The lady, we did raise the limits though on their personal auto policy from $100,000 to $250,000 per person, which was a lot better. The lady called me a couple of weeks later because they were going to think about getting the additional coverage for the $1 million umbrella that covers umbrellas, their autos at home and rentals. And when she called me back a couple of weeks later saying, Tim, did we ever start that umbrella policy? And she's driving while she's talking to me. And I say, no, what happened, hon? And she explained that her husband drove through Highway 108 at the intersection in Oakdale, took out 3 vehicles because his brakes gave out on his truck. And he's sitting on the curb and all the vehicles were towed away and all the other people were taken away in ambulances. So she was very concerned about the liability situation, said she'd be in the next day to buy it, which she did, but she also knew that it wouldn't cover the situation that just happened, but she didn't want to go through this again.
Great. And I know we've since also purchased gap insurance, which
Right.
gives me that measure of peace of mind.
Yep.
Knowing that if something does happen, that if the auto doesn't cover it, then the gap will kick in. And I can say to the audience, it's very, very great.
Right.
That information you provided, I think is very enlightening for our audience. And I think I hope they could benefit from this. Before we close this, and our first episode of Ask the Expert, just share with the audience a little bit about yourself that really makes you, I guess I can use the word special or different, that you can help them maintain or reach their financial goals and protect themselves and their family in the long term.
Well, we do a lot of financial work here, as you know, but I've also started out my career many years ago learning how to protect people's investments in property and their money in the bank and their income by doing the right things for them in the liability side of it. So I understand both sides of the business. I understand also the financial business, being licensed in that, and how people need to protect everything they're working so hard for, because, you know, all it takes is a 2-second accident to change all of that and reverse it and give it to somebody else. And that's not what we work so hard for. Also, it's very little difference of premium to increase your coverages on liability and uninsured motorists. So.
Right. Now, if someone wanted to reach out to you and get more information, how would they do that?
They can reach me on our website, Tim Rowen Allstate. You can type that into any computer. It'll pop up with my phone number, which is 209-667-6777. And our website's there too. And I get emails through that all the time. So
Fantastic. Well, Tim, we appreciate all the insight and your expert, answers that you've provided of our first episode of Ask the Expert. Next week, we're going to be discussing, for those that are renters, you still want to protect your assets. We're going to talk about renters insurance. And for those that are homeowners, we're going to talk about homeowners insurance also.
Right.
As you watch this video, if you have any other topics that you'd like to have discussed related to health and wellness and, the law, other things, financial, CPAs, whatever it may be, real estate investing, please reach out to me with my on not LinkedIn, but on Facebook. You can look up Arthur Haggerty at Paramount Residential Mortgage Group, and we can provide those. We want to make this an asset to the community. Tim, I really appreciate it, sir, for your time and you coming out to have this discussion. We'll have one next week, and we'll have many more to come. If this has been helpful, please let us know when you watch the video. It'll be posted on my Facebook, my YouTube, and Tim Rowen's Facebook as well. With that being said, I'm going to close this out with a little bit of music. Thank you, Tim, once again. We appreciate your time.
Thank you, Art.